guys, this is Clay again with Texas Know-How. Today I'm going to work on my brakes on the 96 Land Cruiser, and whenever you're working on the brakes on these things, it's a pretty good idea if the rotors are pretty worn out to replace them. You can have these turned at a machine shop, but I've got some pretty deep grooves in these. They've been on here for a while, and so I'm going to go ahead and replace these. Now I'm using EBC brake pads and disc on this, and you can order those online. I got them from Amazon. They're about the same price as the stock rotors and brake pads that you could get from Toyota. But right away I wanted to show you a few things. We got the vehicle up on jack stands on all four corners because we're going to do all four wheels. As soon as we got it up and safe, we started off by breaking these bolts in here, which are holding the hub, which is this part, to the actual disc, the brake disc. And if you don't do this while it's still on here and you've got your old brakes, you have someone sit in the car, they hold the brakes, you can get a breaker bar and break these loose and just get them loose. When you get this whole hub and rotor off as one assembly, breaking these loose is pretty hard. Whenever you're doing this on a 100 series Land Cruiser, you can't get to these bolts except for from the back. So use one of your tires that you've already removed, the wheel and the tire, and set the spindle down in it just like it would be on the vehicle. Then use your breaker bar and your knees on the tire to break these loose. So I recommend, while you still got the brakes installed, break these all loose right around here, and then before you even start taking your hub apart. The second thing I recommend that you do is, here's your pads in the back, and hopefully you can zoom in and see these. There's a little retainer spring right here I'm going to pull out that holds your pins in. Pull this out, get that out of there. There's the spring. And then the second thing you're going to do is pop these pins out. And you can see they just pull out right here. You push them on one side and you can pull them out. And when you take that off, that's what's going to come out. This is the spring that keeps your pads from rattling and shaking around inside there. So that's going to pop out. Then you're going to take out the bottom pin. So taking that out. The reason I want to show you this is because there's a cool way. If you're going to rebuild your calipers, which I'm going to do, I'm going to overhaul my caliper pistons. You need to get your pads out, which you should be able to work them out of here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to press on the brake pedal, and the pistons inside here will pop towards our disc. And they won't come all the way out, but they're going to pop towards our disc because the pads are going to be missing. The reason we do that is because when you overhaul the seals and everything on these little pistons, sometimes they're jammed in there so hard they're really hard to get out. And we're going to do it with the caliper still together. We're not going to break the caliper apart. It has two halves. We're going to leave that together. There's no ring in here and a passageway for the fluid. We're going to leave that alone. We're just going to pull the pistons, replace the seals, clean up the pistons, and put them back in. And I'm probably going to brush this all down with a wire brush and give it a good paint job too while I have it off. Now when we start taking the caliper off, there's some bolts right back here in the back that hold it on. We'll break that with the breaker bar. You got to take your banjo nut off, the bolt off right here on your front brake line. You see it right here? You got to take that off, and you got to take off your caliper bolts. And then this caliper is just going to come right off. Now just to let you know, whenever you take this brake line off, as you can imagine, it's going to have brake fluid coming out. So it's nice to have something to pinch that off. And what I'm going to use is some old rubber inner tube on both sides with a couple of pieces of wood. On top of that, I'm going to use some vice grips to hold those two pieces of wood on with that rubber in between. That's going to seal that off. A lot of people will pinch this with vice grips too, but I'm not replacing my hoses, so I don't want to hurt my hoses right now. So I'm going to leave that alone. I'm not going to pinch that, but some people do. They just put a vice grip right there and pinch that hose so it won't leak out. Otherwise, the reservoir is a lot taller, a lot higher than this position. It's just going to run out, and you're just going to lose all your brake fluid. Now, I flushed the brake fluid on this not too long ago when I switched my frame to axle brake lines with the stainless steel ones from Slee. So we've got really nice fluid in here. I don't want to waste any of it than I have to, or any more of it than I have to. So the next thing I'm going to do is get these pads out of here, and I'll come back and let you see how that looks, and then we'll pop these pistons with a little bit of pressure on the brake pedal. I just wanted to show you how I get these brake pads out. So what I did was I took my screwdriver and I've just pried between the brake pad, hope you can see this, between the brake pad and the rotor. And I just pushed and kept pressure on the top, then on the bottom with the screwdriver. Now I am putting my screwdriver against that rotor, but remember we're going to replace those. So if I scratch a little bit, it doesn't matter. Then these little plates right here should come out, and these are your shims. That's what they look like. Okay, those come out, and then you just come on the inside and wiggle these brake pads out. And see, those were worn pretty good, and I'm looking, they're worn a little bit more on the bottom than they are on the top, and that's normal because most of your motion is going forward, so the bottom catches and does a lot of your braking for you. The other thing to note on these brake pads is that little squeal tab right there was starting to squeal. That's why I'm starting to hear it. A little brake, this little squeal tab they call it, was starting to touch on the actual metal. So it's metal on metal, and that's what makes a sound. But let's use the same method over here and just put pressure on this and hold that, and I'm just slowly compressing that piston on there, and you can see that brake pad get loose, and I'm just pushing, holding pressure, and it's just pushing that hydraulic fluid back up in the system. And then see how those brake pads got loose. I pull my shims out. There's those shims on that side. And pull your brake pads. Now, a real cheap brake job, you go buy the pads for 40 bucks and just slide them right back in, slide your shims in, put your pins back in, and it is the cheapest brake job you can do. Problem is they're not seated to the rotor. They are going to be, those brake pads are going to make a lot of noise. But if you had to get a quick inspection and just get her done, you could just put new pads in there and put your pins and your springs back on and put your wheels back on and run down and get it inspected, because your brake pads would be full thickness. But that's definitely not the right way to do a brake job, because your rotor in here needs to be resurfaced, or you put a new rotor on every time you put new brake pads on. That's going to keep it from squeaking. So I just wanted to show you getting those out. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to go in the car, or I'm going to have my son go in the car, and he's going to put some nice pressure on this brake, and it's going to pop those pistons out towards this. Then I'll take the caliper off and rebuild the caliper. Falling inland. Inward. Okay, I didn't end up rebuilding the calipers on the 80 series, but I'm gonna slide in some video here from the 100 series front caliper rebuilds and just show you the method that you can use to pop these pistons loose. And look on my channel for the rebuild of the 100 series if you want to get the entire video of redoing the 100 series front brakes. So let's go put some pressure on the brake. Car's going inside. He's going to start putting some pressure on this brake, and we should see these cylinders start working out. Yeah, they're moving. Go ahead all the way down and then pump it. There you go. That one's really coming out on the top. Go ahead. Bottom one's coming out. Keep going. See, whoa. Okay, now I can get another pump on it right there. Okay, now the top left one started moving. Go ahead. Okay, one more. Those left ones were so frozen up. See, now we got the bottom one. Okay, keep going. Now we're getting the bottom one. Okay, good, stop. Now we've got those all pushed out. The reason we wanted to do that is because these cylinders are very hard behind the rubber here to get out unless you do what he just did. Alright guys, getting these little cone washers off is always a pain, and you know, everywhere you read they say to use a kind of like a brass punch or a brass drift. This is a whole brass hammer. Again, my friend Harbor Freight, but you can see how it's dented up. It sacrifices the hammer instead of the bolt, but if you hit this right on the end, it really does work. Now what I'm doing is I'm screwing the nut back to where it's just flush with the bolt. And I'm still, after I get these off, they're still turning by hand really free, so watch this. See if you can zoom in right here. And we'll try to get that up there where you can see it. Okay, watch this, a couple of hits. See it pop out? That cone washer just popped out. Go to the next one. Popped it out. You can go around this thing so fast. Popped it out. Yeah, I think I did 2 of them before I got on there, so popped it out. So it's only way to fly. And then look, all these come off by hand. So I just wanted to film that because it really is the way to get the cone washers out, and it doesn't hurt anything. You're sacrificing the hammer's head instead of these bolts right here, and they're hardened, so you're not hurting your studs at all. And it just goes so fast that you just take that right off, and then your dry plate will just come right off. Come off like that. So there's that. And then the last thing is take your dry plate off. Oh, it's kind of got it caught right there. It's coming off there. There's that. Let's see some. Oh, look, it's these little things that are in the. So there's like a little raised area. We were wondering what that was. There's a little pin, alignment pin that keeps that aligned. And what we've got here is the first thrust washer, but it's got little tabs that are bent on it right here. You got to bend away. Can you see it over here on this side with your light? See, there's a little lock washer that's bent right here against it, and that's what holds it from moving. Best way to do it is kind of hammer it over. And a lot of people replace these every time. These little lock washers in here. Because these tabs, once you bend them back and forth so many times, it Alright, so we went and got a socket, and this is usually like a 54 millimeter, but also a 2 1/8 will work pretty good on it. And a lot of times, see, you can just get your hand on that and get that loose because they're not that tight. In fact, I think that was a little loose for this truck, but anyway. And then here's that first lock washer, and it's keyed. There's a little key right here. It keys into the spindle. Then we go in and get that back one. This is the one where you actually are gonna set your. There it goes. You're gonna set your. See, that's a little loose. That's probably what I was feeling when I was steering this. Is a lot of times when people put these back together, and I'm looking at these bolts right here and stuff. I think somebody replaced these rotors the last time they did a brake job. And I probably could, now that I look at them a little closer, have them turned and use them. So I'm just going to keep them. And then the next time I'm ready for a brake job, I'll have these turned and ready just to swap out with the ones I'm about to put on it. Yeah, so what happens is people put these on and their bearings are repacked and really lubed up. And because of that, they don't get the spindle to seat really good and tight. And if you look on I Hate Mud, you'll hear them talking about that, how it's a kind of a mistake you can make, where you think you've got this hub all the way in with all the bearings up tight, and it's really not. So you have to follow the procedure. And then even what people are doing is getting it completely done. They follow the procedure, they think everything's right, they'll drive it a little bit and they'll come back and they'll put it up, just lift it up with a jack, and they'll grab that front of that tire, yank on it really hard, and if it pops a little, you know you don't have it. So you pull all this apart again and you reset your tension. But right now, let's pull this off and take a look at it. Instead of getting a bunch of axle grease on that, I'm gonna kind of wipe my gloves because I might repaint some of this stuff, and it never helps to have it that grease impregnated down in there really thick. But I should have a bearing that's coming out with this on the front, and I'm just gonna come forward. There it is. There's the front one, and then this is the back one along with the oil seal. It really needs to be replaced. I don't have one this weekend, so I'm probably going to leave it and not replace it. But it's not dripping out. It just, you know, probably could use it. But there's the back. And then now, since we've already, while we still had brakes, we've already broken these bolts loose right here. I'll just take them off, and then you can get your disc off. Rebolt this right back up to the new disc. I'm going to pack my bearings real quick and clean them up. But there's the spindle right here, and you know, the moving axles right here inside of it. You can see how it moves a little bit. Hub from the rotor. It's got these 6 number 17 millimeter bolts here. They look really new as well, which is continuing to make me think that and there's the hub without the disc on it. There's the disc. So now what we're going to do is we will get the new disc and lay it here and just reassemble that hub right back on one time. Alright guys, I'm going to cut away here and show you on the 100 series where I took the grease seal out of the back of the spindle and removed the bearings, and I'll also show you how I repacked those bearings, cleaned them and repacked them. I didn't get that videoed with the 80 series. On it. I'm going to set that right there. Anyway, that's the back oil seal. Then you can take out your back bearings, see, so we can repack and clean those bearings. And we're replacing these discs, so this grease right here doesn't matter, but if you were going to use these discs, you'd want to degrease that and get that grease off. But there's a method to check these bearings, and whoever had them last out, they did take these out and lube them. They just didn't replace that oil seal, because this is pretty new grease. It's that red, you know, nice moly grease. But you know, I'm looking here, and if you look at each one of those little barrels up close, you can kind of see some ridges. I mean, some, not ridges, but I can't feel it, but there's little marks on them, and I'm wondering if that means they're wore. I'm going to go look up how people are checking these, and I'll clean them, and then potentially we may have to replace them. They don't feel loose, they feel nice and tight. Alright guys, so we have cleaned up the bearings for the driver's side front wheel, and I'm looking at these, and they're from the US. These are Timken bearings, so they're not the original ones that came from Japan. Unless Toyota sources their bearings from the US, which I don't think they do. They look okay. I mean, I'm seeing some striations on them, and I'm using my parts washer full of a soap solution, actually, which is something I haven't done before. I usually have some kind of caustic, you know, paint thinner type stuff in here, naphtha or something like that. But I'm using a ZEP, Z-E-P, and you cut it about 1/3 with water, so 2/3 water, 1/3 ZEP, and it really did just break down all that stuff and get it out really good. I mean, just like you would see on, you know, a parts cleaner that was using you know, naphtha or something like that. But I just wanted to show you this part of it. You know, we're just cleaning it under here with a brush, get all the grease out. Here's the front bearing, also a Timken. They were probably replaced at the same time. You can see maybe right here it says Timken right there. And again, those are nice and clean now. We did do a final rinse with real water. We're going to blow them out with the compressor, and then we're going to repack them with grease. Alright guys, this is how you repack bearings. So got them all clean, and we blow them out with compressed air just to make sure we didn't have any trapped water or anything like that. The first thing you do, hang on a sec. Let me get a piece of paper to set these in, and I'm gonna set them right there. Okay. First thing you do is you get you a big old wad of this, because you're gonna put about that much in there. And you get your bearing. You know, there's a wide crack and a narrow crack. I always start on the wide side, and I'm just getting a little bit, and I'm pushing it in right there in the cup of my palm. I'm going around, and then it's going to start coming out this back side. I'll show you in just a minute. Let me get something going. See that? Can you see good? It's filled those cylinders up good enough that it's oozing out the other side. And then you just take that, you keep working yourself all the way around. And this is the traditional way to do it. That you always see the old timers doing it. They have a little bearing packer that actually kind of pushes grease through from one side to the other with pressure. But you know, I don't have one of those. Alright, here's the new rotor, and I've already compared the hat height of it, which is what they call this, which is the difference of the height of this and this surface where your brake pads are actually going to hit, with the old rotor, just to make sure I did get the right part, and it's a perfect match. Now again, these are the EBC brakes that I mentioned earlier. They're from Europe, and they're made to the Toyota factory specs. So I'm going to go ahead and put this hub right back down in there, and I'm not doing a lot of cleanup on my hub and everything this time around because it's Sunday and I've got to get back to work in the morning. But I would, if these weren't pretty new, I would probably clean those threads and everything so I can get a good torque on these, but they look really new. So I think whoever basically did the brakes on this last probably replaced these screws and the rotors. So I may put a little anti-seize on those because they're kind of acting dry and they're kind of catching, which can kind of throw off your torquing. Put a tab of anti-seize on there. Not a lot. See, and that just helps it go in the way it's supposed to so I can get a good torque on it. I like that a lot better. And you know, a lot of people think, well, put some Loctite on these, but it doesn't call for any on these. And you guys that watch this online, let me know if you put Loctite on these rotor bolts. But you know, I don't see doing that, because I want to get a straight, nice torque on this, and let the torque of the bolt be what holds it on there. Taking this one out, putting some anti-seize on it as well. It's gonna look pretty cool on there. Okay. Now I'm just gonna bump them, you know, right here on the ground, enough to get them kind of down good so nothing gets whopper jawed when I put it on. Alright, so now we've got, I just used some of this bearing grease and repacked the bearings. We've got everything ready. The back seals on this. So this is the new rotor. And again, I'm using the EBC. I think I've said that a few times. But I'm just going to go on here. I'm going to be gentle because you don't want to mess that up. I did change my gloves because I'm handling the rotor at this point, but now this hand's going to get dirty. I'm going to grab my newly packed bearing. I'm going to slide it in, get it up in position like that. Then I'm going to take the bearing retainer washer and key it, put it in on that key. Okay, clean. Well, the first of the two of the nuts. These are spindle nuts. And hey, if you can't find that 54 millimeter, you can use a 2 1/8 SAE socket, and that's what I did. I got it at Sears. They had it right on the shelf, and so I did that with mine. And so that's what this is. I mean, it's a real heavy duty. I mean, you could take tractors apart with that thing or something, but that's what I did. So that, and I had to get my 3/4 to 1/2 adapter right there, because you just don't need a lot of torque on this. You're not going to be using your 3/4 inch ratchet on this. And you're going to snug it down and turn it a few times this way. And you can turn it a few times the other way, and it feels those bearings are nice and packed right now, so they're feeling real good and firm and all loosey goosey in there. Tighten it a little more, and then I'm going to go back this way a couple times. And everybody's got their technique on how to do this. In fact, the factory service manual has a technique on how to do it as well. So just follow that technique, and then once you got that where it's on there like that, always back off where it's hand tight like that, and then I just go a little bit more. But that's kind of how you put that on. You also can get pretty serious with it right here on this flange and see if you can get it to move on there, and then recheck this. Feels about right. And then the other thing I was going to mention, I'm going to go back with my lock washer. But the thing I was going to mention is I'm not going to rebuild my calipers right now. I got to looking at them. I think they actually were replaced last time with the last brake job. All the pistons moved real nice and smooth, and it hadn't ground too bad on my pistons any kind of weird way. I mean, on my old brake pads. So I'm just going to go back with that for this time, and I'll rebuild it next time. Saves me a little bit of time, and I'll just keep the kit. I had a kit for it. And now I'm going in with my lock washer. And then I'll go in with the last nut. Snug it down so that other one can't back off. Alright, what we're going to do is leave all of the drive plate and cone washers and all that stuff off right now. I'm going to reassemble the caliper back onto the truck. I'm using a little bit of blue Loctite on those two caliper bolts, a little blue Loctite, because you just don't want your calipers to ever come loose. And I didn't break the system this time. Like I said, I'm keeping the calipers for this run because they look like they had been replaced actually with remanufactured ones last time the brakes were done. So I didn't need to do it this time. I'm just going to save my kits. I'll put my calipers back on where you can see how I'm doing it. Okay. Okay, now you check again. Nothing connecting. Okay. And then we're going to slide our brakes in here. Now what we may have to do is compress those pistons just a little bit, because that, with no pressure on them, they tend to kind of walk out. But I wanted to show you the brake pads. I'm using them in their EBC as well, and they've got this break-in coating on them, And I've heard people say they wish they'd get out on their driveway or something to scrape that off because it takes too long to break them in. But I'm going to leave it and try it. And they've got built-in steel plates on the back for anti-vibration. So I'm going to go ahead and try to slide these in, and they're going to go in the same way the old ones came out. They're just going to slide right in, and we're going to line up our holes for our pins. Not quite there. Work it over just a hair more. Put my screwdriver all the way over off the brake disc, all the way inside against the hub. And let's pull all that disc over. I mean those pistons. This is kind of pushing the fluid back up in there. The other thing you can do is drop an old plate in there because it's going to protect the disc. And use that to pry on. You know. Got my screwdriver wrapped with black electrical tape. There we go. Now I'm in there. Brakes on. Retaining spring. With these little holes pointing the right way. You gotta kind of point towards the center here. You can use your screwdriver to kind of turn this right here and get them to feed in correctly. I know this is pretty hard for you guys to see. It's hard for me to see it. Get that in there like that. Okay, now I'm just kind of turning this until it feels like it's in its natural position where that spring's going to stay. And that's it. So if you'll notice, what I did was I reassembled everything here, but I left this off. I think I was saying that earlier. So we can go ahead and mount the wheel now. We can yank around on the wheel and make sure these bearings are in the right spot, and we can re-tighten this before we put on our drive plate if we need to. So we've got our new rotors, not torqued yet, and we got the calipers on, all torqued down, and we got the new pads in. These are the green EBC 6000 pads. And I got my retainer spring in there for vibration. We're mounting up the wheel and tire so that we can check the bearing tension right here. And you notice I left off the drive. See, I don't have the drive plate on, and so that way I can swing this thing around, really give it a yank or two, and see if the bearings are really seated. And if they are, then I just lock this down and go ahead and put my drive plate on. If they're not, then I can actually tighten my nuts just a little more and get the bearings just right, so they got the pre-tension on them. So I got to snug up my wheel first though. Yep, a little bit loose. So now what I'll do is take my lock nut off. I never did bend down my flanges on my lock washer. So I'll take this one off. Really didn't have to put this on for that test, but I just thought if I have it right already I can just tighten it down, but I didn't. It's got a little bit of play in it. You can see it. So now I'll go in here and give it a little bit more. Now I'm not getting any play in those bearings. Let's whack it one more time. Let's see. You just need something kind of heavy. I'm using a wood splitter. I'm just giving it a yank. It's mainly just a shock wave that kind of sets it in there. And see, that still feels good. So I feel pretty good about that. And I'm going to go ahead and put my lock washer back on. Put down the last spindle nut. I'll firm this up to that last one. And when it's a little bit snug, I'll snug it up. Now like that. Then I'm going to find one of these tabs I can bend in to hold it. This one right under here is flat. So I'll bring that up and lock that washer. Lock that one in place. Now it's up against there. Alright guys, it was getting late last night so we didn't keep videoing, but before we closed it down and went to bed, I did get Connor to help me. He went inside the car and held the brake. We took the wheel back off. I torqued down those 6 bolts that hold the disc brake, the rotor, to the spindle. And don't quote me on this. I need you to look it up yourself to be sure on this, but the 54 foot-pounds, I believe. We got them all torqued down with a torque wrench, and then we cleaned up, put the drive plate back on, snap ring back on, and that little cap back on. And then I was able to put the wheel back on and the hubcap. So this side's done. For the back, I'm going to make another video because this one's getting long. But if this was helpful, hey, please subscribe to the channel. It helps me out. And until next time, this is Clay. I'll see you later.